Hello guys, and welcome back to the How2Animate YouTube channel. And in today's video we're going to be going back to basics and having a look at one of the principles of animation, squash and stretch. But before we start, I'd like to just quickly go over what the principles are and where they come from. So what the principles really are the rules of the trade. So new students of animation should learn, understand and apply these until they become second nature. And where they come from, it's the earliest days of Disney, when animators come up with jargon to describe certain animation techniques that brought about successful results. Before long, these became the common practices of the studio, and new artists were taught them as need-to-know principles. So if you are coming into animation and are struggling to get the results you want, I can pretty much guarantee it's because you haven't put the time in to learn, understand and apply these principles. A major discovery by the animators was that when drawing organic creatures, they could show a dramatic amount of movement within its shape between the actions. By squashing and stretching the character, they could achieve a new level of charm and believability in the character's actions. By applying a contrasting change of shape from a squash pose to a stretch pose, gave a new level of life to the animation, whereas the characters before this time were treated as solid objects. A similar thing happened in the early days of 3D animation. Before these principles were adopted, the characters were basically static meshes. Now part of this was the fact that people hadn't realised that you can apply the 12 principles of animation to 3D animation, and part of it was also a technical limitation of the rigs at the time. They simply couldn't be squashed and stretched into these kinds of drawings. But then things started to change as the technology got better and the animators realised that they could apply 2D principles to 3D animation and start treating the characters in terms of a flexible organic mass. We can now see squash and stretch being commonplace throughout movies and games. So how does a student of animation actually go about learning how and when to do squash and stretch? One exercise that the early Disney animators were given was the bouncing ball. This is also a great place for 3D animators to start. I have a step-by-step tutorial on this channel if you'd like to find out exactly how to do this. Once you've done a whole range of bouncing balls and you feel confident, it's time to move on to something more advanced. The more exercises you do, the more confident you'll feel about where and when to use squash and stretch, and it'll become like second nature to you. Now it's important to make a distinction between keyframes, which are also known as extremes, breakdowns and in-betweens. Now keyframes tell the story. They are your main storytelling poses, and these should be strong and easily recognizable. The breakdowns go in between the keys, and the in-betweens fill in these gaps. By adding contrasting volumes between the keys, squash and stretch can make characters have the feeling of life by introducing a flexible quality. Squash and stretch can be felt but not seen, which gives the animator an amazing amount of creativity when working with stretch breakdowns and playing with volumes in motion. Squash and stretch also overlaps with other principles such as arcs, timing and spacing, which we'll cover in the next videos. But for now, it's important to know that when you are using squash and stretch that the character needs to follow the line of action to maintain proper arcs. Now there are a couple of things you need to watch out for when doing squash and stretch. Although it's very exciting to have this new tool in your toolbox, overusing it can be bad. Try and gauge the amount of squash and stretch that is needed depending on how quick the motion is. When doing squash and stretch, you want to make sure that you preserve the volume of the character. Although the character is squashing and stretching, they still maintain the same volume. And lastly, use a good rig. Not all rigs are created equal, so you want to make sure that you get a decent rig with the ability to squash and stretch properly. So just to summarise this video, squash and stretch is a really good thing to learn, and you need to start incorporating it into your animations as soon as possible. And you want to get to the point where you no longer even think about it and you just do it naturally. So I really hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give this video a like. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and if you would like personal tutoring, I do offer that, so go check out how2animate.net. Have fun, keep animating, and I'll see you guys in the next video.